me start again. Hi, welcome on in, everybody. Poop Witch X here, and I have the absolutely amazing and incredible Mr. Rickmon with us here to discuss therapeutic use of role playing and how role playing can help with mental health. How are you doing, Mr. Rickmon?
I'm doing good today. I can't
Good.
complain too much.
Good. I'm so happy that you're here. I feel like this topic is something that people feel very passionately about and some people don't even know about. So I'm so excited to get into this with you.
Of course. This field alone is kind of very new. It's
Mm-hmm.
not something that's very much explored, which is great because being on the beginning position of this is exciting in itself.
Right. Okay, so why don't, first of all, you tell everybody a little bit about your background, your degrees in the different therapies and counseling that you have.
Okay, well, I'm Mr. Rickman. I got my undergraduate degree in psychology with a focus in counseling. I got my master's in divinity, so slightly different, but then a focus also on counseling. So I graduated a couple of years ago, haven't put that into action yet. I enjoyed my job I was working at as a secretary, basically. So I didn't want to change that up, but I found a love for tabletop games. And then I wanted to know, wait, can I do this and counsel at the same time? And so that's my degree path that I've been looking on for the last year or so.
What was the reason for you, first of all, just pursuing like the psychology arts sort of thing? Was there anything
Well,
that inspired you to do that?
yeah. So when I was at a young age, I always wanted to help people. I always had that, like, if I could make one person happy, then I've, had a good day.
Right.
Um, my original goal was having like a marriage and family therapy. Like that was my focus I wanted to do with my life because I wanted to make sure that marriages were healthy. I was always tired of the people like shouting different statistics about marriages that were not true, but they heard it once, so that's stuck in their brain. So
Right.
I
Oh,
really
I
wanted to
love
focus
that.
on that
Yeah.
from a young age, but then, I've had health issues that would have made it very impossible for me to continue on that kind of a path with how you have to have so many hours in that degree. If I
Right.
was still pursuing that specific degree, I probably wouldn't have graduated yet.
Wow.
It
And
would have
you're
taken a
still
couple more
taking
years.
classes now.
I'm taking classes towards tabletop games,
Okay.
nothing for my master's degree. I
Okay.
graduated with that and done.
Okay. And now so what are some of the classes that you're taking right now?
Well, some of the classes I've taken related to Geek Therapeutics, which is a company that's doing this, um, about different things about like Marvel and how to relate that to therapy.
Mm-hmm.
There's Dungeons and Dragons and how you can incorporate that. The concept of tabletop games that sometimes you are who you decide to play. You put that,
Oh.
you put your character like I am me on a paper, and now I'm going to play me. Or
Mhm.
maybe you decide I want to be the best me I can be. So not who you are, but what you want to be is who then you start playing as. So
Huh.
those different courses I've been taking.
Okay, so would you kind of, for people who might not have a lot of experience with Dungeons and Dragons and role playing, would you sort of equate this to a much more immersive version of how kids play through, games with their friends, and they play house and they emulate what they see in school and sort of working through problems through an imaginary sort of game kind of
Oh,
thing?
absolutely. Any
Okay.
kind of role play for like young adults, children, any kind of role play that gets you into the mindset of I'm going to do something outside of myself. I mean, some people role play that as themselves, but not 100% you.
Right, right. Well,
And
you want to
yeah,
create distance so you're not like completely playing yourself, right? You don't want it to be you want it to be so that they can look in and see the character. Or do you want them to, when they play that character, to play as themselves, exactly as themselves?
well, I mean, I guess it really depends on what they're wanting to work through.
Okay.
To if they want to really explore themselves and figure out what makes them tick in a certain way,
Mm-hmm.
or they really want to be that really courageous person, then they can try and like osmosis feel that courageous person out and then continue to do that.
So like if you were to have, let's say, a couple, right? And let's say they were having marital, issues, whatever. We don't even have to go into specifics. What would be the advantage of going this route for this couple instead of maybe doing as people, like you said, they have this like stereotype of marriage counseling and sitting together on a couch and, how would this be different and more beneficial for that couple?
Well, obviously it would depend on the couple, but
Mm-hmm.
one benefit of this kind of role playing and tabletop games in particular is you might hit a special interest with them.
Okay.
So they might love tabletop games. So you're making the daunting, oh, we're going to counseling, we're going to therapy, into, oh, we're going somewhere where we're getting to play games together and try and grow with one another instead of that constant, oh, he's against me, she's against me.
Oh, I
You
love
have
that.
you're putting a, hey, we are going to work on this solution. It might be an imaginary solution. It might be something far-fetched that doesn't really relate, but you pull that back to how it can relate to their relationship.
And that goes into how there's a flexible narrative that allows you to customize the gameplay for that specific couple.
Oh, absolutely.
Okay.
One big issue with that is people in the tabletop industry and try like counseling, they think, how can I create a game that does all of these things to help people? But you're looking at it from the wrong lens then. It's
Okay.
what system can I use and then incorporate these measures into?
Huh.
Because you can be a really smart guy, but throwing all the scientific terms into a game and say, "Hey, this is going to work and fix things,"
Mm-hmm.
you're not doing what they want. They
Okay.
want a game that's like Dungeons and Dragons or Call of Cthulhu, whatever system,
Mm-hmm.
and how can I incorporate learning elements into their play?
Right. So it's basically it takes that taboo sort of thing that's associated. It's not even, I hate that word, but like that's associated with therapy and how it's like a lot of people have this very antiquated sense of like we're sitting and we have tissues and we're he said, she said, and then the therapist is really there just to mitigate. This is really supposed to allow them to work through their problems in a non-confrontational way that's supposed to be fun and sort of takes that stereotype of therapy away. Is that sort of one of the
Yeah,
benefits of
yeah,
this too?
absolutely. And then
Okay.
ultimately they're in control.
Mm-hmm.
It just as soon as they leave the office or whatever room that you're gathering in, it's up to them to take control of the relationship. You're not going to be there for every fight, so you're
And
already
also, they
giving them
take
the
control in the game too. They get to
exactly,
control the actions of their character in that game as well. So,
exactly.
okay, very interesting. Is there like any fundamentals to this technique that you'd like to discuss, like pillars of play or anything like that?
Yeah, so the standard pillars of play in most games is not going to fit for everything, but Dungeons and Dragons and other games, the three pillars of play are your social aspect, your combat, and your exploration. So that exploration could be exploring things, then you can look at it from a counselor's perspective. You're exploring the situation. What
Okay.
is going on? So it might be they're having differences in opinions that they just keep butting heads about. Well, you're going to put them into a scenario where they're going to butt heads, but solve this appropriately.
Okay.
And then it leads into discussion of your social aspect. How are we going to solve this without fighting, without yelling at each other?
Mm,
And then the combat, it depends on how you want to role play that.
okay.
Uh,
Could the combat be where you put the people, whether it's a couple or family, into a situation that is supposed to elicit a larger reaction? Like it's supposed to move the narrative in a bigger way, or is combat really not to make it be more confrontational?
the combat could be. It just depends on. I mean, you'd have to know where they are in the
Mm-hmm.
situation. I've seen combat used as a physical representation of something that they're going through. Like
Mm-hmm.
you are going to go fight someone's depression, and like you are
Okay.
fighting this
Wow.
monster, or you're
Wow.
fighting this. There's a really lovely one shot that was created where you go into someone's dreams and you fight these things, but the end goes, but you're not perfect now that you fought these things. They're still struggling, but you're
Oh, wow.
more aware of their problems they're going through, and that it's not a, okay, cool, we're done now and it's over.
Wow. Do you also think that by removing, like you said, like the depression and making it into an actual monster that you could tackle, doesn't that, even just that step of doing that, also sort of help people when it feels like it's such an uphill battle for people? Like it's such a it's like it's so hard when it's all internalized, but taking it outside of yourself and making it into something, like a monster that you can, slay. That sort of, I feel like that step alone can be really therapeutic.
Yeah, absolutely. Because once again, you're seeing it's not you. Like
Mm-hmm.
you are not the problem. There is
Right.
something that you're trying to work through.
That's
So no matter
awesome.
what you're working through, you're trying to say, I'm not going to let this define me.
Mm-hmm.
And I mean, of course, you could have combat as like a fun filler thing also into a game that you're like,
Right.
great, we're going to have combat. Or how are these two people going to work together? Is this person going to try and help the other person in
Mm-hmm.
battle? Or are they going to be like, no, it's all about me?
Okay, so when we're talking tabletop role playing games, now it feels like, from my limited knowledge, can you even do this as an individual, or do you need to do this
Oh,
as a group?
no, there's a lot of like one-on-one things that you can do.
Mm-hmm.
So you just have to scale the situation in order to do it by one-on-one person, knowing
Okay.
we're not going to throw a bunch of monsters at them because they can't handle that. But if a one-on-one, you're exploring different things. I've actually been testing that out a
Mm-hmm.
little bit one-on-one,
Mm-hmm.
and I have taken some courses on like how to do one-on-one play.
Would you say, what would be the benefits of, like, because I feel like it seems very intuitive as a group, that, or like as a couple, but what would be some of the benefits for individual role playing?
The individual role-playing, that would help someone who's a little bit more shy or trying to get out of their comfort zone in order to be the one taking the steps. So you
Okay.
might have um, people to join in with them, like your characters you're creating for them around them.
Mm-hmm.
But it's like, no, it's your decision. What are you going to do? We're going to follow you.
Wow. Okay, so
And
this
yeah,
can break people out of their shell.
right. It could do whatever you want it to do as
Mm-hmm.
long as you're prepared to do it and you're trained to do so.
Okay. And then obviously, what would be the benefits either in a group setting? Could you do this as a family, like a parents and some children, or do you think this is specifically just for like couples and then maybe the kids go separately kind of thing? Or could you do it as
I
a group?
think it would be great as a group because you're going to, depending on what the group is looking to fix or work on, you have
Mm-hmm.
that sense of accountability and support and the feedback like, hey, you did great. Like, hey, when you defeated this monster and saved me, that was great. And you feel that sense of camaraderie, whether it's with your
Yeah.
family that you might having issues with, or, a lot of this counseling can come in a completely random group of people. You might not know them, but you might be all potentially struggling with the same kind of thing.
Wow.
And so, yeah.
Do you allow your do you would you say, is it better for the therapist to create the characters, or would the patients create the characters?
I think it would be a group effort, but I
Okay.
would be more interested in watching them create the characters because, as we
Mm-hmm.
said, I want to see what they think they need to work on.
Mm-hmm.
So if I'm not going to be like, all right, you're a brave character and it's the really timid person, I might be like, all right, if you want to create a timid person, well, I'm going to make you speak up. We're going to get you
Yeah.
comfortable doing those things.
So what would be, okay? So I feel like it sort of seems intuitive that, like, I feel like marriage counseling with this sort of role playing is such a great combination. But could you also work through like traumas with this kind of therapy?
Sure. I mean, you'd have to be, once again, very careful with what you're
Right.
doing and
Of
at the
course.
pace of the person.
Right.
But if you're like, oh, I went through this scenario and I'm really wanting to try and work through it,
Mm-hmm.
you could either have your character have gone through it, or
Mm-hmm.
maybe your character is a witness to what that person's going through. And now you're like,
Oh.
well, what would I wish to have said to this person? Like, if I was outside,
Oh.
what would I want to tell myself from the outsider's perspective? And you might get that insight just because you've done it before.
Honestly, what I love about what you just said is, I think a lot of people who are living with trauma, it's very hard for them to separate themselves from that trauma. And I think doing like what you said, where you put yourself in a third person perspective and you're watching it unfold, and then you can kind of make decisions without it being affecting you directly, and it can give some clarity to the person who's suffering from that trauma. And I think that that is a really good utilization of this type of therapeutic tool, actually. Like probably one of the, because I'm still leery of like, can you do this by yourself, one on one with just a therapist?
Right. I think that's like the one of the best benefits of role-playing games. I mean, role-playing in therapy happens daily already. It's in a game sense, maybe not. Maybe you're not rolling dice, maybe you're not looking at character sheets typically. But the
Mm-hmm.
concept of role-playing is nothing new, and you're doing it in a safe, almost consequence-free environment.
Right. And then I feel like some people may even work through things and put so much into their character that they didn't even initially intend to do. Even if it is more or less just in a joking manner, in a normal role playing Dungeons and Dragons game, a lot of people use these types of game to express themselves.
Absolutely. And even if it's just a fun game, you going to play a game with your friends, and
Mm-hmm.
you're like, oh, that just kind of spilt out of me. You
Mm-hmm.
don't not understanding it, but you're creating complex characters. If you're gonna do a role-playing game, most often than not, you're creating someone that's got dynamic. You're not just I like turtles and that's the only thing I ever liked and that's all I'm thinking about.
Right.
It I have feelings and well, what is your feelings on this? And then all of a sudden, my feelings based on this might be different than theirs. Now, why do we have such differing opinions on what needs to happen?
Right. Okay, so what would be, as the therapist doing this, or counselor doing this, what do you prefer me to say, therapist or counselor?
Either, but I mean,
Okay.
therapeutic counselor, it's
Okay.
really redundant at this point.
I know. That's why I'm like, okay. So, what would you hope for as the counselor, watching your clients or patients? What would you hope that when they build their character, what would be what you're looking for specifically? Are there specific like notes you'd want them to hit, or is it really just free reign, like make the character how you want?
The only thing I'd really want to see is how they wanted to tackle whatever issues they were dealing with.
Okay.
I want to know it. I want a specific distinction.
Mm-hmm.
They either are the timid person that wants to get better, or they're the really brave person. Because then I could be like, see, you're really brave in this role playing scenario. Like, how did that feel doing this as your character? All right, can
Okay.
we do this without a character sheet in front of you? You know?
Right. Okay.
So to get
So
that best self or the your actual self, as long as you clearly define that, then I know where we're gonna go.
okay. Do you have like a okay, so this actually is going to bleed right into what I was thinking when you were talking about like how do you create a character for your patients? But then in a normal Dungeons and Dragons we have something called a DM. Can you elaborate on what that is?
So the DM is the facilitator, the one that creates the story, runs the story, makes sure that everything's going well.
Mm-hmm.
You create the pace of the whole adventure. So I mean that would be like the similar to a counselor or similar to someone facilitating anything. You're determining the pace of the things you're doing at. So
And you're
this
creating
is what we're doing.
the
Yeah,
space for them.
you're creating the framework. So
Right.
a great dungeon master or game master, depending on your terminology, says, here's the things, go ahead and do them. They're not going to try and challenge you in a way that's detrimental, but they'll be like, I want to see you grow. I want to see how you're going to get through the door or, build on that.
Right.
The,
And then you want the DM to in a normal Dungeons and Dragons game, you want the DM to unfold the story by the actions of the players, but the counselor's doing the same thing fundamentally, right?
Absolutely. Both in
Okay.
that sense, they're both hitting on interactive storytelling experiences.
Okay.
Because people are like, oh, it's just a game. But at some point, it becomes much more to you. You care
Mm-hmm.
about it more than just what you say is a game anymore.
Because you care about your characters, even in a gameplay setting. You care about the outcomes of your characters and the future of your character. And I feel like as this is a therapeutic tool, or a therapeutic strategy, if you will, you're going to care even more because you know that whatever you're working through, your counselor is doing this very specifically for your issues. It's a catered game, if you will, right? Like you wouldn't just you would make up a game for that specific couple. You wouldn't just do the same game for every couple.
Exactly. You'd
Okay.
have certain things that they'd have to go through or experience or work through in every situation. So you do feel that sense of personal involvement, like, hey,
Mm-hmm.
this is my character, but then it's also this is my story,
Mm-hmm.
and you want your story to be told in a way that's effective. But it just is like any kind of counseling. You want to feel heard,
Right.
and the DM, the counselor, whatever you're wanting to use, is saying, here, I've heard you. Now look at the story I've created to help facilitate this.
Okay, so now I feel like, is there any potential downsides of this kind of therapeutic tool? Is there anything that could be like, could it be too, like, I almost feel like people would get too immersed. Is that even a potential threat in this kind of therapy, or is that not something that you would really worry about?
Uh, I could see them, it's like what some of the terminology is like bleed out or bleed in.
Yes,
Like,
yes.
so I could see that happening, like possibly where they're living as their D&D character, not
Mm-hmm.
like outside of the game,
Right.
where like they have to be this character in order to feel this confidence. You're
Right. Well,
trying to,
that's exactly
yeah,
what I was thinking. Like as an introvert, if you're you're working with your counselor to become more stand up for yourself and to have more of, like power in your voice, only being able to identify as do that as the character. Is that would even that be detrimental, or would that be like, you know what, maybe they need that character to be able to do that, or is that not what the outcome you would want?
well, I mean, ultimately, that's what we were talking about, the I am who I play style. You begin to realize the character isn't uh, a separate entity of you. The character is you now. Like your
Oh.
personality and your feelings, those are now becoming one ideology.
Wow.
So not necessarily, you're not going to be like, cool, now I could go push over boulders or do all these strength-based things or magic-based
Right.
things. But the emotion I felt and the change I felt in this counseling session, this Dungeons and Dragons game, whatever, is real enough to me that it evoked change in the game and it can evoke change in real life.
Wow. I feel like this is something that, like, as I, did you studied family counseling as well, right?
Right, yeah.
So did you ever do a focus on child psychology and child counseling, or was it just the whole family dynamic?
It was mostly marriages and families,
Okay. Cuz
primarily.
because what's interesting is because I studied, in my undergrad, but I studied a very general, like, child psychology type of concept. And what's interesting is one of the fundamental aspects of that is to do, as a therapist, you can't have a 4-year-old sit on a couch and expect them to pour their heart and soul out to you. Most of the way that you get a child to talk to you is through playing and make believe.
Right.
And somewhere as we get older, that ability to open up through gameplay gets diminished as we get older. Why do you think this is just a newer concept? Why hasn't this carried over from childhood, adolescence to adulthood? This kind of therapeutic tool.
I think there's the stigma behind it. I mean, like I said, there is that small aspect of role playing in a
Mm-hmm.
counseling session, not like game based or like really thought out, because people assume games are bad. You have
Yeah.
the stigma that games are violent, games are this.
Yeah.
Anytime you've looked at any like actual research on it, it's been either such a small sample size that it doesn't matter, or really bad examples of like, hey, how do we make sure they get incited violence so we can claim
Right.
that's the result?
Right.
So you have that stigma that games are bad or troubling, so you don't feel like you're able to say, hey, I'm a gamer.
Oh,
That
wow.
that nerd aspect that people
Mm-hmm.
are like, oh, I'm not allowed to say I'm nerd. Now taking a no, I'm a nerd. I'm proud of it. All of
Yes.
these things,
Okay.
you're kind of reclaiming things that you find are okay to do,
Mm-hmm.
and this is one of them. And you
And
also, I mean, you as much as you have a stigma of games are bad, you have the stigma of counseling. So that
the double
combination becomes
whammy.
that. Yeah.
Yeah. I actually that it's a twofold issue as well because I feel like Dungeons and Dragons, if you are unaware of the game, it is nothing like playing a game like Call of Duty or something like that. They're not even
Absolutely.
in the same family, but different generations may not understand that gaming is not a blanketed. I mean, it is a blanketed term, but there are so many subsets, and you can utilize this style of gaming as a way to experience like stories and life in a way that you may not have ever had the opportunity to do so other than watching a movie or a TV show and reading a book and pretending you're in that place. This actually allows you to choose the outcome of your character,
Right.
which is
Yeah.
yeah.
Funny enough, I did actually take a course on like video games, like actual like
Really?
those shooter games, of how
Yeah.
to also incorporate that into counseling as well. So things can be used as long as you have a willing person and
Mhm.
the knowledge to do so and the ability to.
So incorporating what you just touched upon about like RPGs and those sort of things just for a split second. If you had a family and let's say the mother and father were very concerned that their adolescent boy or girl whatever was playing these games and showing signs of aggression, would you use this tabletop role playing game as a form of to work through that so they understand that not all gaming is that, or would you maybe stray away from trying to incorporate gaming as a therapy because they're already so leery of the RPGs and stuff like that?
I definitely give them a position to, well, I would need to address the concern, but give
Mm-hmm.
them a position to show, hey, let's sit down, let's watch your kid play for a little bit and see what's happening.
Okay.
And then let the kid explore what's going on to really determine, like, oh, no, they think, oh, this is totally bad. I can't wait to, kill this other guy. Or it's like, hey, no, I'm trying to achieve a goal. I'm trying to get this. As soon as I do this, then this thing unlocks, or etc. And then
Right.
the parent can see it. The parent might even try, I might try and get the parent to join in on those games to see, like, oh, no, this isn't really bad. And
And
to
sometimes that
tabletop, yeah.
yeah, no, please continue.
The tabletop sense would be the same exact way. You're going to get them sitting down together to play a game, and like, all right, let's go. If you if you
Mm.
don't think a game like this is going to be beneficial, let's make a game that's beneficial.
Huh.
Let's teach them a way that it feels safe,
Mm-hmm.
and eventually give them the confidence that, hey, maybe I don't want my son to be playing this shooter game all the time. Maybe we'll sit down once a week and play games together, like Dungeons and Dragons or something, where
Right.
they are in a little bit more control of what's going on.
Mm-hmm. And then
You don't want to,
also,
yeah.
it's not as I think when you play those RPGs, they are inherently violent. So these are can I mean you can potentially the DM could potentially make a violent. But maybe if that's something that the couple is already fearful of, the DM can redirect it so it's not as violent. You can construct a specific story to make everyone feel comfortable.
Oh, absolutely. You can
Yeah.
make it where there's no killing involved.
Right.
Anytime something gets hurt, it just gets injured and like goes unconscious and nothing ever dies. So
Right.
you can li- do it that way. You have to address the person's concern and validate their concern, but then also show them where they might be too far leaning one direction. They're thinking, "Oh no, this is super bad." It's like, well, some video games are more graphic than others, and that might not be suitable for young ages,
Mm-hmm.
but it's not going to necessarily determine their lifestyle.
Right, right. Would you say that this sort of therapy, the tabletop role playing games, would you say that this is like immersion therapy?
Uh, yeah, I'd absolutely say that it would be a source of immersion therapy.
Mm-hmm.
Um, Another concept would be narrative therapy because you are telling a story through those things.
Okay.
It just really depends on how much you integrate different therapy types into your games.
Mm-hmm.
Because a person-centered therapy, you're using those genuine, empathic things, unconditional positive regard in your games already. So
Mm-hmm.
you're using different tools to help them achieve their goal.
Right. And then if you approach it from different angles where it is goal oriented and it's not I think it will help destigmatize it as well because like you said before it's the double whammy of there's a stigma with counseling and a stigma with playing games as an adult.
Right. I mean, Dungeons and Dragons specifically, they've got the Satanic Panic. They've been trying to fight for decades, where it's like, oh, it's the really bad game, and it's like, no,
Wait,
it's
wait, wait.
not a
What do
bad
you
game.
mean satanic panic?
Oh,
Like the worshippers of the devil, people think that
that
that's
yeah, absolutely. People assumed that this was devil worship for the. I mean,
wow.
to a degree, some people still do, but that's what they assumed it was, and they're like, well, we're not going to play this game. It's not allowed in the house. That was such a huge stigma around people playing
Wow.
Dungeons and Dragons. Then I was like, all right, only people who are nerds play Dungeons and Dragons, and it's like, no,
Oh.
there are nerdy
But it's
people who
still
play
they're
it, but it
making it
doesn't.
still shameful. They're still
Yeah,
making it shameful, which
I
is
mean,
not, yeah.
the
But then you have
resurgence is
shows like Stranger
yeah.
Things, which has made D&D cool. Like it's made it more like I think the more that gaming becomes part of our normal like TV shows and I mean I watched an episode of iZombie and they did Dungeons and Dragons and it was my favorite episode by far. I think the more that we allow these sort of gameplays to enter into our normal societal whatever, maybe the stigma will be diminished as well because I've never even heard that it was about devil worship or
Oh,
anything like that.
that was a huge part of. So those are those things. As soon as you begin to like, once again, as soon as you begin to feel what therapy could be,
Mm-hmm.
and you that stigma is reduced. As
Okay.
soon as it's not, oh, therapy is my last resort before something drastic happens, but it's like, no,
Mm-hmm.
therapy's fine. You and your couple are having just a dispute that you really can't solve. We're gonna go to therapy so we can build our communication skills so we don't have unresolved conflicts in our life. It's not like our relationship's about to end. We got to go now.
Okay. But let
As
me
soon as
ask
you
you a
find it.
question
Yeah.
based off of what you just said. Now, can I throw a really hard situation at you? And like, obviously, you're, just off the cuff, what you think how you could work through it. Could I ask you?
Sure. Yeah.
Okay. So let's say you have a couple who's married for 15 years, okay? Kids are grown up or mostly grown up and they are having a lot of issues. They're fighting and they're not communicating and the husband maybe let's change it. The wife may be having an emotional affair with the neighbor, right? Okay, so no one's touched, nothing. How, if you have these two people sitting down with you, what would be your first strategy with them? Because that's a lot, and that's 15 years of history. What would be like the first step you'd take?
Well, the first step, it would obviously the character creation and stuff.
Mm-hmm.
Uh, it would be getting to understand the feelings that were had. There's a lot to different unpack on why they decided to do what they did
Mm-hmm.
and things, but you begin to create a narrative.
Okay.
So this situation, probably I wouldn't make that X is cheating on Y in the game,
Mm-hmm.
but they're experiencing this happening in a more global sense. It could be the king found out the queen was doing something behind his back, and then it becomes a bigger emotional conflict that somehow the couple now got roped into in the game. And now they have to solve how this is why it's problematic in the first place and how to fix it for the king and queen in order to get the problem resolved. So they might take
Right.
a step back from it because once again that's going to be a really heated topic because it's like no
Right.
no you've been doing this. What about all our years together? And it's like
Mm-hmm.
whoa, hang on, let's remove ourselves from like the hot button and then
Right.
try and unpack it together. Initially, it might be good to do like individuals for a bit to
Okay.
try and figure out what's going on, you
Mm-hmm.
know,
Well, I
because
think that
you have to
like
build up
when
the
you
trust.
yeah, and I was gonna say like when you're working with a counselor, not only do you have to build up trust, but the counselor needs to understand the fundamentals of that person. And a couple is not a one entity; there are still two people that have just joined and fused, but you still need to understand each side of the coin. So you would probably
Correct.
do like a separate. And I think that one of the things that's sort of fascinating about this is like you are exploring their world and unfolding their worlds in real time. Like this
Absolutely.
happening right in front of your eyes. You may be the DM and have the narrative of the framework like you said, but their choices, as soon as she says to you, I side with the the king is, I think that the king did nothing wrong. You're already in your mind going, oh, okay, so she doesn't even think that she did anything wrong about the emotional betrayal. Okay, that's
Right.
something I need to focus on subsequently. Do you know what I mean? Like,
Absolutely.
you're unfolding it as well.
Absolutely. Then you could see how that impacts the person that's sitting next to her as they're having
Mm-hmm.
this gameplay. You can also see how it's going to impact his character.
Mm-hmm.
Uh, in Dungeons and Dragons, one of the roles you can roll is insight. So if they rolled it to see how the other person's feeling, I would give live interpretation of what that person's experiencing in this moment.
Right.
So it's like, oh, well, you just watched their face drop as soon as you agreed with the king instead of the queen.
Mm-hmm.
And then you can take a step, like you can pause it there, because some of playing the Dungeons and Dragons is not going to be a straight playthrough. It's going to be like, all right, we're going to pause and we're going to discuss this.
Mm-hmm.
Why did that person have his face drop when you made that comment? What
Right.
could be that reaction to it?
So you take them in and out of the world.
Absolutely.
Okay. Now let me
If
ask you
it's
a
if it's
question.
necessary. It's not
Okay.
gonna like we're not gonna stop after every like 10
Right.
minutes because I want to, but it's like here's an emotional beat. We're gonna take it. We're gonna go over it. I'm not gonna just like, cool. Remember what you did 25 minutes ago?
Mm-hmm.
Pulling that back, you want to hit it and like what you said, real time. You want to hit
Right.
it as soon as they are getting that raw emotion,
Mm-hmm.
and then maybe have them process it later too. But hey, I just watched this. I'm gonna take a note of it.
Right. And then as the DM and the counselor, you can take that knowledge that you saw of that face dropping, that tear falling down, that pause in the game and go, okay, this needs to be another storyline or something that is fleshed out further. Like you can literally change your framework too around that reaction of that dice roll, which is kind of
Absolutely.
like the coolest shit ever. That's really, really fascinating because a lot of what I've seen and understood from especially marriage counseling, whatever, it's a lot of like, tell that person how you feel. And it puts that person on the spot right there. And I know that some people just really struggle with words and expressing themselves in a really open manner. They're locked in, they're shut up. But this way, you go, okay, I saw that. I'm going to take note of that. That might be we do it one on one. That might be we change the story so that I keep pushing, or maybe we pull back. You
Right.
can
Absolutely.
decide in the second. Now, let me ask you, how would you, if you have somebody who absolutely refuses help, how would you get them involved in this? How is that person who just will not go to therapy? How would you try to get them to do something like this?
It would really depend on, once again, it's hitting that special interest.
Mm-hmm.
What are, what is going to make them care about being here? Because ultimately, you have to know the only time you change is if you want to change. So
Ooh.
you
Can
have
you say
to
that
acknowledge
again?
that
That was really good. Say that
the,
again.
the only time you change is when you want to change. You're not
Wow.
going to do it. You could change for someone else. If you said, hey, I would like you to stop drinking, they'd be like, okay. And that person stops drinking. It's not for them, it's for you. So as soon as they stop wanting to do what you want to do, they're going to start doing it again. So I have to
Wow.
engage them in something they want. So
Okay.
they want to be the cool guy with the big axe and just like smashing stuff? Cool. We got the big guy with the big axe smashing stuff for a little bit. Now you're invested. Now we can start putting in that character work of what's behind that person that just wants to smash stuff.
Right. And appealing, I think that if let's say I'm just, not even, but I feel like you might agree with me, but some men I feel like may be a little bit more just stereotypically, I'm generalizing, but maybe a little bit more like I don't want to go to therapy. I'm not going to talk about my
No,
feelings.
absolutely.
Right. So this way you could be like, listen, it's don't even call it D&D. Just be like, do you want to go play some role playing with me? Like if they have a negative connotation with the word, with D&D and they think it's for, whatever. Just say because I feel like this is something that people would find fun and the therapy is like the undercurrent. You don't even realize it's happening to you. Like, it's like all of a sudden you're working through problems in this really safe and fun environment. And I feel like that is probably more of an allure for someone who's like, I'm not going to talk about my feelings kind of thing. Do you know what I mean?
Absolutely. you play to what their strengths are. You notice that
Right.
they might not talk much, but they get an excitement out of doing something. So
Right.
you provide them more of opportunities to do it. Just as a regular DM would be like, oh, the healer shines best when they're healing.
Mm-hmm.
Well, we're going to give you opportunities to go heal people.
Mm-hmm.
You find their best traits about them, and you never go like, oh, this person has a weakness. It's like, no,
Mm-hmm.
they have something they can work on. So
And also,
we're
what's
going to
cool
work
is
on that.
they can work on it and they can create a character. Like if you have this guy who's very, like locked down, he can make, like you said, a guy who's wielding a huge axe who can like be, the tough guy that he feels like he is while still working through very emotional problems.
Exactly. Or you could find
Mm-hmm.
it the complete opposite. You find the guy that super tough exterior, but plays the really quiet, smallish character. They play
Okay.
the little gnome bard, and
Mm-hmm.
it's like, well, where did that come from? And maybe that's their inner person wanting to speak out that they're too afraid to do on the outside. But they
Right.
choose a character that would like A, stand out in a crowd, and B, is supposed to entertain in a way to push themselves.
Right. And I just feel like so many people have. I mean, I do you agree with me when I say that like everyone should really go to therapy?
I absolutely think there should not be a stigma. I feel like people should be able to work on things
And there shouldn't be
with
any negative
in a safe environment.
connotation.
Absolutely.
Right.
You
And
should
I
feel say
right.
I'm sorry, you should feel safe
No.
and comfortable
Mm,
saying, I'm gonna go do this. This is a problem I have because everyone has problems. This is
right.
something I would like to see less of in my life. What can I do differently? And I mean, we are most often, due to either costs or whatever, restrained from just going, I really would like help on this. And so
Hmm.
you begin to internalize it like, oh, well, I've got problems, but I'm sure they've got problems, so I can't ask them. And it's like, no, this is, and then you go, especially into a group setting of D&D going, oh, we all have problems and we're all working together to solve them. You
Right.
know,
I
you,
think that's one of the beautiful things too about something like this. It is everybody's working together to solve those problems too though. Like if you have a family, right, and the family is working through the problems together, that is it's a very healthy exploration of your feelings. Whereas I feel like a lot of the times with family counseling, it's a lot of like putting the pressure right on the person to say what they're feeling, how that person affected that person. And I sometimes feel like it becomes very confrontational. This way, it takes it away from you while still working together as a group.
sure, absolutely. And there could be confrontations inside a
Mm-hmm.
D&D setting, which
Mm-hmm.
makes it like appropriate risk taking. You
Okay.
don't feel like, oh, if I say something wrong now, the therapist is going to look at me like, why'd you say that? But it's
Huh.
like, oh, I'm trying to explore myself. I'm trying to explore my ideas and feelings. And inherently your feelings are valid because this
Right.
is a safe space to do it. In a
Mm-hmm.
game set situation, this is a safe space to express your feelings as your coworker, whoever you're working with is going to be like, yes, I feel you. I understand what you're saying. They might not necessarily agree with it. They might have to roll with the punches because you might have said something,
Right.
off cuff,
Mm-hmm.
but you're all in this together
Right.
kind of an attitude that once again destigmatizes counseling. Marriage
Right.
counseling isn't like A versus B anymore. It's what are you doing together to put yourself back?
So is there like okay, so with therapy, usually let's say if you go with a goal to work through a very specific thing, there technically could be an end in sight. I feel like for some people
Absolutely.
you really have to go. For this, do you also feel like there could be a definitive end to the therapeutic sessions, or do you feel like this could go on and on, you could keep exploring?
So it would really depend on what they're trying to work towards,
Okay.
but most therapy techniques like kind of agree like there should be like a session limit, like
Right.
8 to 10. It's like eight to
Okay.
10 weeks, which is still 2 months, 2.5 months of time. But if you wanted to continue to go through things and you were able to financially and time wise, sure, do this for the rest of your life.
Right.
I've seen some people experience this and go, this is such a great thing to do. Now I'm going to start it up and just do a cathartic D&D, not necessarily as like a
Huh.
counselor, but they're
Right.
now going to run it for their other friends. And they feel like they have the empowerment in order to help others just feel
Oh.
welcomed and cared about.
I love that they take what they've learned and how they've learned to express themselves through this role playing, and they want to share that because it really, I mean, you're right, it's not always accessible for everybody financially or even time wise, you know, like people's schedule change. But I feel like that is an amazing thing that you can teach people how to also express themselves through a very cathartic role playing, and that they can help others do the same. Maybe not working through actual traumas and marriage counseling type of thing, but just with your friends. Like, so many of us need that outlet to be able to work through things together with each other.
Right. I think that would be one of my, because I've seen other counselors, doctors do this before. The like a section of like empowerment. They're going to empower their gender in order to feel something. Like for me, I would be empowering men to feel okay to be with their emotions. We're gonna talk about it, and it's not taboo anymore.
Right.
So like a
Right.
whole thing about like, all right, guys, we're gonna feel it out.
Can
We're
I
going
just
to
say,
say this okay and explore those
right.
emotions once again in a safe environment, because telling me this is how your character felt isn't going to make me think less of you. But you're
Right.
like really excited when character A got a flower from character B.
Oh,
That's great, you know?
yes. So, and also, I was just thinking, like, this would be a great way for, like, couldn't you have, like, obviously not huge companies, but like even like coworkers and and employers and things that on a smaller scale, not like gigantic 2,000 people things, but like could work through, you could
Oh
really
yeah,
work through any, it doesn't just have to be family and marriage and these very personal relationships. It could be, you know, a really good character and team building
absolutely.
exercises.
Yeah, I mean, there are some people who do run them for businesses and stuff, but like a company outing, it just really depends on how long and how many people you're comfortable running with.
Hmm.
The appropriate size would be about 5 or 6 people at
Right.
most.
Right. What would you say, like, because I feel like this, as you said, this is a very like new concept. What would you say your official title would be? Like as a blank, blank,
Well, as
blank, like
yeah,
so
so
people understand.
as soon as I do, I just applied for a program that is literally
Yes, you
on the
did.
that's on the forefront of doing this,
Right.
with the doctors that I've admired for a long time. I'd get to be certified therapeutic game master.
How cool is that? That is the
So,
coolest thing. A
which is
therapeutic game master. I love that so much.
because it's really hard, at different states to be like, oh,
Right.
well, what's your title? What's your licensing? It,
Mm-hmm.
it varies for every state. But with this, like therapeutic game
Mm-hmm.
master, not therapy, therapeutic game master of
Right.
exploiting games, and it's not just D&D.
Right.
I will probably play other games besides D&D, but that's just
Mm-hmm.
one of the tools that I can use in order to help people.
What's another game that you could use?
So Call of Cthulhu is another game system. It's more dark and mysterious, but
Okay.
there's the Fate system. There's Star Wars, or Star Trek
Oh,
versions. And
okay. So you can if someone is interested in other, hobbies like Star Trek or Star Wars, which are obviously massively popular, you can incorporate that in so it becomes even less stigmatized. Like, well, I love Star Wars, then maybe this is something that I could also be, really enjoy doing, and it's a subset of something I already love.
absolutely.
Very
And
cool.
then most people would feel like the Genesis system.
Hmm.
That one's more of a I cast a spell. Okay, well, what kind of spell do you cast? Like, it's all more imagination. It takes away a lot of the barriers for a lot of people. And then there's
Okay.
people who really like all the rules that want to do like Pathfinder or other games that's more number crunching. And, you
Oh.
know, to each their own, whatever they feel comfortable with.
Right.
But
Right.
there is a starting place for anyone. If I was with a I personally would not prefer this, but if I was with a
Hmm.
group of like younger children doing this,
Hmm.
there is a My Little Pony tabletop game.
Wow. Okay.
There's literally and I mean, there's a lot of D&D books for younger kids now, trying to get them excited about it. And there's,
Mhm.
you know,
Which
all
tabletop role playing game do you think lends itself to being the best therapeutic tool? Do you think there's just one, or do you think they all have merits where they need to go?
I think they all have merits. I'd say like a Dungeons and Dragons system or like Genesis leads itself to such an open world, open-ended. You can do whatever you want because you can do whatever you want. If you're
Hmm.
wanting to not do as much combat focused, there's other systems that don't have any combat at all. Like the Call of Cthulhu, very little combat. It just depends on what you want to do. But
Right.
like I said, with Dungeons and Dragons, I can create an entire world all based around your character for that day. So your decisions, your feelings,
Right.
whatever
And
you
this is
want is built into
right.
the story.
And this is like a perfect thing for someone who may have been taught from a very young age to suppress their emotions and to be the man and, boys don't cry. This is a very it's a way to take yourself out, to put yourself and say what would my character do, and to explore emotions that maybe they may be told they weren't allowed to explore, or told that, you know, they can't. They physically, they emotionally can't do it. This is like, would you say that this is like a better tool for that?
Absolutely. And that would be like part of the character sheet. If you're like
Mm,
someone specifically like, "Oh, I'm stoic and I never cry." And it's a little like, "Well, why do you want to be a character that never cries? Is that
right.
something they think is okay? Maybe you're creating a character who also grew up thinking that that was how I had to be. I had to be the man
Right.
of the house at a young age, and that's
Mm,
what kind of character I'm creating." And then you automatically address your own issues and,
right.
beliefs
Right.
automatically.
So for somebody who, like you said, is very stoic and very, like literally has trouble emoting at all, would you say, as a soon to be therapeutic game master, would you say that you would want this character, client or patient, would you want them to create a character that is stoic, or would you say, listen, maybe you try making a character that can very easily express his emotions so you could feel what that feels like to be open, or would you let them kind of dictate?
I would personally still want to give them the opportunity to
Mm-hmm.
choose, because if you, once again, if you're forced into a change, you're not going to want to do it.
Right.
So if you have, but it doesn't mean if you're like, I'm going to be the stoic character, it's like, cool, I'm going to give you all of the people that are like, hi, and very friendly and want to show emotion to you, and then be like, wait, why aren't you showing emotion back? You're going
Okay.
to either way. Or if you find this, maybe you are now being the person that's supposed to have all the feelings. And I'm going to give you the really hardened person who thinks that you never should feel anything. And then you're
Oh.
confronted with yourself as a non playable character. Like, oh,
Hmm.
this is me as a character. Well, that's really annoying that they're always stoic and they can't feel like they can cry. I would really want them to feel like they can cry.
You are like blowing my mind. That is such a good concept, to have someone, like you said, and you called it a non-playable character,
Yeah, so
which
that's
means,
the lingo for it. Like
okay.
NPC is any character that's not dictated by you.
So
So
this
there
would
in
be
D and
that
D, there's a
you
player characters and non-player characters.
Okay. So this would be the dungeon master's basically moment to say, like, this is a fixed thing in this counseling sort of thing.
Absolutely, yeah,
Okay. So what I think that just blew my mind is that you said that you'd face a character that's yourself and be like, why is this person not responding how I want them to? And it's like a mirror
yeah.
reflecting yourself without.
It might be
Yeah.
a complete direct mirror. It also
Mhm.
might be a really over the top mirror. Like, wow, this really over the top to get them to see what's going on. It's not a
Right.
lot of times you want to address your problematic nature without it being blunt.
Right. Right. And that's also the other thing that I think that this is a to me this is can be a superior form of therapy, because I feel like so much of what people consider therapy is a lot of like blunt, face this reality, look at this, and it's not always, and it's not unilateral, but I feel like it's often they really want you to address the problem and head on. Not always, but sometimes. And I feel like this you have so many different tactics you could take, all from a very outside looking in perspective, which is rare for therapy. Almost everything is inside looking in, you
Right.
know? So that's actually it's pretty amazing. And I think that this gaming being used for therapy is going to be a very big thing in the future, and something that I don't think will be stigmatized anymore. I hope it won't be, because there's no reason for it to be.
That's the ultimate goal. And
Right.
with all of these different techniques, there's I probably have them do an assessment of, I mean, of course you'd have an assessment of some sort. Then I
Mm-hmm.
basically look at their whole life and how to incorporate
Mm-hmm.
that kind of
Mm-hmm.
whatever they need to hear at that moment.
Right.
So That's the most important thing, whether you are in a regular therapy session, a regular counseling session, or you're just playing D&D with your friends. The person helping you is helping you. They're not against you. They're not trying to watch you fail, watch you lose, because there's no point in watching you lose. There's no satisfaction in watching you fail at something. It's watching you succeed. And it's okay. It's okay to also, stumble during these things. You're like, oh, I'm supposed to be the character that's super like on top of things, but you messed up, and it's like, all right, cool. That's literally life. We're going to experience an altered version of life as a growing opportunity. You're gonna mess up still. You're not gonna be the super stoic character, the super energetic character 24/7, because we're humans and fallible. But we get to explore what it looks to see a perfect world.
Oh my god, I'm gonna cry. That was so moving. Wow, I got the chills. No, honestly, I feel like I'm getting teary eyed because I feel like um so many people feel like they're scared to even try because failure is more intimidating than the idea of, oh, maybe I could grow a little bit. Maybe I don't have to suffer. But the idea of failing or being rejected or whatever keeps them from that growth opportunity. And you're basically like, listen, I'm going to build you this amazing safe place for us to explore together, and you might stumble but I'll never let you fail, and that is absolutely beautiful. It's
Right. I mean,
beautiful.
that's also the core aspect of a tabletop game. You're not 100% in control anymore. It's the roll of the dice. It's the
Right.
roll of whatever system you're using. So you might be like, yes, I did so great, and then all of a sudden the dice just weren't in your favor that time, and it's like, well, that's us in life. We're doing everything we can possibly right for the scenario, but the world was like, I'm sorry, this isn't going to work this time, and it's like, okay, then I'm going to try again because that's all you can do. And so that
Okay,
put
that
that
is
kind of in,
amazing. That it's so true. You know the saying that like the cards you're dealt, the dice
yeah,
you roll. Like,
yeah. I
mm,
always take it, and I've binged watched so much Dungeons and Dragons and other tabletop games.
mm-hmm.
So often you'll find the failures in those moments way more impactful than the success can be, because
It's a
now this failure,
growing.
yeah, it's growing, and it also might take you down a completely different journey than you would have ever done if you could succeeded on everything in life. So the same as a game, same in real life. Like, well, this opportunity didn't work. Okay, well, maybe there's an opportunity better out there, and this saved you from regret not taking the better opportunity later.
Wow.
So that's how you experience that in Dungeons and Dragons the same way. Well, what is if I swung and hit every single attack I've ever made, are you gonna have fun anymore? Like,
Right.
oh,
It
I just
makes
hit
it too
everything.
easy. Right.
It would be too easy for you, and that's
Mhm.
not life. The life is the challenging aspects, because the challenge brings growth more than success will.
Wow. Okay. So this I feel like is a great stopping point. Although I think that we're gonna have to do this again because this was so emotional. Like I feel so touched, and I really I think that everything you're working towards in your life. First of all, just as a friend, I'm so proud of you. But I think you are going to change people's lives with this ability to help people in a way that it might be perceived as new, but it's something that I think you know should have been used for a long time and also can help people in ways that maybe more like the norm of counseling might be lacking. You This is a
Absolutely.
new spot. Is there anything else you'd like to say about this amazing about a therapeutic game master? Is anything else you'd like to add?
No, I mean, I will at some point be able
Okay.
to start launching my business,
Mm,
Tabletop for Growth.
yes,
Um, there's some information I'll post a
please.
Twitter link later. But that is my goal. I mean, and oh, of course, I'd love to come back after I finish this course.
Hmm.
The latest it would be like June,
Okay,
but
and then we have
then
to
I have it. Yeah,
we have to do another one.
I can unpack all of what I learned from there,
I would
and
love that.
I'll keep information up, because I'll even be doing game mastering for
Hmm.
that group
Hmm.
live on Twitch through
Okay.
their own entity at some
Okay.
point. And just for anyone, if you're interested in therapeutic natures of how gameplay, any kind of geek things work, it's really accessible. Like it could be like $20 a month or so for the program I'm using for all the courses. And you have a catalog of courses from anime to D&D to everywhere else. So if you're interested in that, message me. If you're interested in ever setting up a therapeutic game, I'm
And
here.
and also, Mr. Rickmon is going to be doing a newbie D&D seminar. This is not a therapeutic variation, but on the 19th here on twitch.tv/poopwitchx, Mr. Rickmon is going to be teaching us all about the basics of Dungeons and Dragons, the how to build a character, terminology, how the dice rolls work, all on Friday the 19th at 10 p.m. Eastern. So if you are interested in learning the fundamentals of Dungeons and Dragons, Mr. Rickmon is going to be our dungeon master for the foreseeable, as long as he'll have us for the foreseeable future. So on Friday the 19th, we're going to be having our newbie seminar, and on the 26th, we're going to be doing our first one-shot campaign, and I don't think we could possibly learn from a better person, Mr. Rickmon. I am
That's a
so
big
excited.
honor.
Thank you so much for joining us, Mr. Rickmon. This is twitch.tv/capital M, lowercase r, Rickmon, RICKMON. Please go check out Mr. Rickmon. He is an amazing human being who is going to do so much good in this world. Thank you so much for joining us, Mr. Rickmon. I appreciate you.
Thank you for having me.
I love you. Thank you so much. And thank you all so much for watching. If you enjoyed today's podcast, there's going to be lots of other podcasts just like this, but with different co-casters, different topics. We will be posting this on my Twitch channel. This is on my Twitch channel, twitch.tv/poopwitchx, but it'll also be posted on YouTube, which is just poopwitchx. Thank you so much for joining us, and I will see you next week.